Hello and welcome to the Psychic Stories podcast, encouraging conversations about mental health. Today I'm speaking to Alice Wright. Alice runs a modern calligraphy business and she's a lover of Marmite, trees and netball. Hello Alice.
Hello Matt.
How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you today?
Yeah, I'm good.
Good.
So the goal of this podcast is to have an open and honest conversation about your mental health journey, to get some insight into the tools and techniques that have helped you and are available and accessible to people. By discussing your journey, we hope to share and normalize conversations about mental health, as often people are not alone in these experiences. So, over to you. Please tell us about your mental health journey.
Okay, so I want to kind of start with a little bit of a disclaimer to say that, you know, not everyone's story, as everyone knows, is the same. This is my story. It's very personal to me. It's just one account. And my path hasn't been linear like everyone else's. So it's a bit all over the place, but I'll try and keep it as less jumbled as I can today. I have learnt, though, that my health is my wealth, and that is my biggest taking away from the whole thing, I think. And I'm still learning that as I go. So I'll kick off, really. I was a happy-go-lucky, life-loving 25-year-old girl with no real history of mental health, and my life flipped on its head in a matter of hours, almost. I was traveling through Italy with my boyfriend, now fiance, Nick, and we were having a great time. We were falling in love, seeing beautiful things, eating beautiful food, speaking to beautiful people, and I got very happy. And I got kind of very, very happy. My mood was elevated, and it probably was elevated to an extent where it wasn't socially acceptable that it was that high. Mm-hmm. So I had a couple of poor nights sleep, traveling through the end of Italy, and we decided then to head to my godparents in Slovenia. And I had a couple of poor nights sleep, and suddenly one night I went to sleep and a voice popped into my head. And it was talking to me what felt like the entire night, basically. And it was very, very disconcerting, very scary, something I'd never experienced before. And I did some things that were very out of character. In the morning, with my godparents, I am Nick there. I stripped naked. I decided that I wanted to break my godparents' glasses in half. I decided I wanted to go outside into nature, touch the earth. I could see everything very clearly. Everything was beautiful. The colours were outstanding. And I was seeing and hearing things from my past and present that I couldn't explain. And I was getting scared, you know, and because I was getting scared, I was getting very aggressive. And in the end, they had no choice but to call an ambulance, and I was put into a psychiatric hospital in Slovenia, which was an experience. My parents flew out, and after 5 days or so, we flew back to the UK, and I started my care over here. And I was told while I was in hospital, when I was slowly getting better from this state, that I'd had a psychosis. So I, you know, which was a scary moment, the moment they said, you know, so you've had a psychosis. And I was thinking in my head, well, I've heard that word, but do I know what that means? Have I? Is this happening to me? You know, all these things kind of came into my head. And, you know, I later found out that psychosis is a mental state where you lose sight of reality and you can have hallucinations and delusions. But you know, it wasn't really until I got out of hospital and I started piecing my life together that I kind of realized that. So After several weeks, maybe months in hospital, I came out, and I actually became very creative in hospital. So I actually wrote, I think it was 35 poems while I was in hospital. Never written a poem in my life.
Wow.
Yeah, so I wrote these poems, and I became very creative, and I you know, and I had some new beliefs that were quite kind of out there and quite kind of obscure, some of them, quite spiritual, and I was just trying to get my life back on track, really, when I came out of the hospital.
So just taking that to step back a bit, like,
Yeah.
so you'd had no experience of a psychosis before, any form of voices or hallucinations or anything.
No.
And then that traveling, you, like you said, you elevated to you elevated to a very happy state, but then it got happier, and it almost got to a point where, and did it, I mean, interested to hear how it felt at the time, because you know, if there's something in my very limited research about psychosis, is you know, it's you lose contact with reality, but from your perspective, that is your reality.
Yeah, of course, exactly. That's exactly it, and that's that was the hard thing to get my head around, the fact that I was being told that I was ill, but where I was sat, everything was real. So, you know, I was hearing things, and I was seeing things, and that was my reality. That was what was going on. Like, there was no doubt about it in my head. So, you know, kind of when they start giving you the antipsychotic medication, and you know, I'm coming back down to earth again, if you like. It's a very sobering moment, because it kind of feels very it feels very different, because you've just been in this place where, you know, everything was jolly and colourful, and you were hearing voices and this, that and the other, and then you're kind of brought back down. But I think it's the recovery that's the hardest, because it's getting your head around the fact that all happened, and that was actually just in your head, and was a mixture of chemicals going wrong in your head, and, you know, various reasons that we'll come on to in a minute. But yeah, it was. Sorry.
I was going to say, so did it feel like a kind of a waking dream? And when you came out of it, you still have those memories of what it was like?
Yes, I do. The first time it happened, I think some of the medication you have does kind of, you know, suppress your memory a little bit. But I do very much of Slovenia, at least. In 2015, I do have a very strong memory of how it was, and how I thought that, you know, the world was being reborn, and we were starting again, and, you know, it was day one of this new world. I think my family nickname's Big A, and I used to call it the Big A Day. So it was the Big A Day, which was like, you know, the day when it all started again. But it was all built off these hallucinations and delusions I was having. So it was very scary.
I can imagine that was utterly terrifying.
Yeah, it was pretty scary. And I think the thing that was, I thought it was scary, but I didn't know how scary it was going to be actually piecing everything back together. That's what was even harder, I think. So basically what happened was, statistically, you can easily have a psychosis in your life, and you can just have one, and you can never again in your life have another one. And you're not considered to have like a mental disorder if you just have one psychosis. You can kind of carry on with your life as you planned. But unfortunately, you can relapse, which is unfortunately what I did in 2017. I was on the wrong medication, and I didn't know that at the time, but I was on the wrong medication, which kind of triggered me going into my second psychosis. So my early warning signs came back. I didn't sleep one night. Nick picked up on it very quickly, and I was meant to be going to Sri Lanka the following day, and I didn't sleep, and Nick drove me from London back to my family home. immediately in the middle of the night, and was like, you know, something's not right here, something's going on. So I became extremely manic very quickly, and my mental health, my mental state deteriorated very, very quickly. So in this one, I was having, it was kind of less spiritual, this one, and this one was more very, very scary hallucinations. So when I was put into A&E, I had this is one of the only hallucinations I can almost remember, but I had this one when I thought I had a nuclear bomb in my chest, and I thought it was going to explode in a matter of minutes, and I thought that it was going, and so everyone around me who was trying to help me, doctors, nurses, family, Nick, you know, everyone, were coming closer and closer, and I was just pushing them away. And so so yeah, it was scary, and also I thought which is what happened in 2015 too, I thought my thoughts were being broadcast, which means that you think that everyone can hear your thoughts, which I know sounds kind of quite out there, but at the time it was my reality. Like, I thought that anything I was thinking in my head in real time was being broadcast to everyone, and everyone could hear it, almost like Gossip Girl, like, but like kind of like weird, yeah. Like that,
which adds to the fear, I assume.
Yes, so exactly. So I was petrified. I mean, I don't really remember it, if I'm honest, but I remember not knowing, because at the time when you fall into these things, you don't actually know well, I don't. I didn't know I was ill. I very much just thought it was going on, you know, this was going on, and so Nick kept saying, you know, you're not very well, and I was like, no, I'm fine, you know, and I was absolutely insistent that I was fine, and I was even able to have moments of lucidity where I managed to convince the doctors and the nurses that I was okay. So I was able to, I don't know how I was able to do this, but I was able to have a hallucination and then go into a moment of lucidity and be really calm and manage to talk them through the fact that I was absolutely fine. And so I think I was confusing everyone. I mean, they're very used to it, I'm sure, but I think I was very confusing to my family at least.
And in those moments, was it when you became very lucid, were you still in the psychosis, or had you regained yourself momentarily?
No, so I think what I believe is that I was still in the psychosis. I think I was actually in a psychosis for several days, maybe even weeks, actually, which is really bizarre because I can't remember it. And so, but I'll come on to why I can't remember that in a minute. But yeah, I mean, I think it was kind of, you're still effectively in a psychotic episode, even though I think that's right. I mean, I could be wrong, but I have a feeling that I definitely was in a psychosis for a prolonged amount of time. And even though I had those moments of lucidity, I was able to do that, but I was still very much not really in real life.
Yeah.
See.
That must have been, I mean, again, I say that it must have been for you, I suppose, so not just terrifying, but confusing and frustrating, that the kind of your sense of the world. I think, did your sense of the world, did you know that something had shifted?
In the sense, in what sense? Like, did I know that the world wasn't real, or?
Yeah. Or from your experience, something had changed. So you were like, okay, I'm experiencing the world in this way, and now I'm experiencing the world in this way. But you said earlier that you couldn't see yourself slipping. But did you know that something had changed?
I think I knew that there was this, because I was getting more manic, and my state was, my mood was so elevated. I knew that something exciting was happening, and I knew that this wasn't just everyday life kind of thing. It felt very much like this was, you know, something like in all the hallucinations I had, like something needed to be done, or we needed to tell someone something, or we needed to, you know, some action needed to be taken. So it felt quite, you know, it felt quite immediate and very very important kind of thing. So.
Okay, so you're very aware that there was something at that moment. So something must be done, some action must be taken, but it's not necessarily that you're experiencing, say, I'm ill, I must take action on this.
Exactly.
It's something is important, is happening, I'm going to act on this.
Exactly. And actually since then, and we'll come on to this later, but I've actually created a video for myself of my well self to speak to my unwell self, because like I said earlier, it's very hard to understand when you're especially when you're manic, when you actually have the elevation rather than depression. So I go up instead of going down when I have my psychotic episodes, and so when I'm going up and up and up, and Nick's trying to, or my family or whoever close to me is trying to say, Al, you're not very well, and they're trying to take my phone off me so I don't do anything silly, and try and control everything around me, and I'm not believing them. So in those kind of early moments before I slip too badly, I've actually made a film which is on my phone. Nick's got it, and it's my well self talking to my future, hopefully never again, ill self, and I'm saying, and it's a bit silly, like I'm there like talking to myself. It was a really bizarre video to film, but it was kind of an important one because I don't think I recognize it when I am actually getting ill, and if I see my face, I don't know, I haven't used it yet, and I hope I'll never have to use it, but if I see my face and me actually talking to myself, maybe something might just help from slipping even further, if you see what I mean.
And that's interesting. Like, oh God, there's so much we could talk around that kind of the philosophy of the sense of self. And it's interesting, like you said, like when you're experiencing your reality, the people around you, your perceptions of those people are changing. You know, Nick or your family may not necessarily become your family or Nick anymore. They become other people. However, like you said, showing an image or a video of yourself may, like you said, help you jolt and say, hold on, something's not quite right here.
Yeah.
And the brain starts to maybe pause a second to go, okay, what's going on?
Yeah, exactly. And so I might in the future, hopefully never, but I might be more receptive to listening to people, calming down, using my calming strategies and kind of, lighting a few candles or doing whatever makes me kind of feel calm in those moments.
Just to bring you down.
And just to bring me down while help is got. And then, if it because you can catch it, you don't necessarily need to slip into a psychosis. I can apparently, you can have manic episodes which don't turn into psychotic episodes, but you can stop the mania. You can kind of bring the mania down, if you see what I mean.
Where the psychosis is almost the extreme of the mania.
Yes.
And at that time, if you don't mind me asking, how does it feel in your, okay, so not necessarily the psychosis, but the mania, how does that feel? Because what I'm visualizing is like a fire raging in my head.
Yeah, I'm told, I haven't done drugs before in my life, but I'm told it's a bit like being on acid. So I don't know, but apparently that's what I'm told. And it does feel quite kind of, you just feel great, and you just feel like you've got more words than you can possibly imagine, because you're talking a million miles an hour, and you've got more to say on top of that, and everything's shiny and brilliant. And this is my experience anyway. I'm sure other people's are different, but yeah, it's very rosy, and everything's great, and everything's too great almost.
And like you said, you get the mania. Do you also get the low side as well? And if so, how does that feel as a looking at it from opposites?
So I actually have. So I have because I had that second episode, second psychosis, I've actually been given the diagnosis of schizoaffective disorder, and so I actually have which symptoms include mania, depression, and kind of symptoms of schizophrenia, but I actually from my history don't have the low side of things. And I have to admit that I did get very low after my first episode in 2015. I found it very hard to patch my life together. I was living in London, I then wasn't, and I definitely had a low moment in my life where I was a bit like, gosh, what am I doing? I've lost friendships on levels that I didn't think I would, and and so I think, sorry, Matt, what was your question again?
It was about the low states, but like you said, that, and it seems like what you're saying is that there's no necessary experience of the low state, which is like the mania, but it was more that the effect of your diagnosis meant that your life had to change dramatically in a way that fundamentally you really didn't want, because like you said, you're in London, you're having fun, and like you said at the beginning, you're playing netball, I remember you playing netball every week, going out, and that had to change.
Yes, exactly. So I think as a result, my recovery kind of set me into a low part of my life, and I became very low. But that hasn't necessarily triggered a psychosis before. It's more the mania for me, where if I get too high, then that's when I slip into one kind of one. So I actually, when I was in hospital, I just kind of continuing my journey a little bit. I was put on some antipsychotic medication, and basically nothing was really getting through to me, and nothing was really working, and so they tried me on different ones, and in the end they put me on this one medication which I actually became allergic to, and I got this thing called neuroleptic malignant syndrome, which is basically an allergic reaction to an antipsychotic medication, and it's very scary, and I think for my family and my friends and Nick, it was extremely scary, because I had to be moved from the mental health hospital into the physical health hospital so that they could concentrate on my physical health. So I went from one intensive care to the next, and I was taken off mental health medication because my physical health was of such importance at that time, and so they dealt with that. And then as my physical health started getting better, eventually they could put me back onto some mental health medication. But they didn't know what to put me on. And so they offered my parents and Nick, would you like Alice to have ECT, electric convulsive therapy, which is basically like zapping the brain almost. So you're given a general anesthetic on 12 different occasions over 6 weeks, and you are and you're given ECT, and basically it's quite controversial, and I don't know how frequently it's offered in this country. I'm not sure the statistics behind it all, but I do know that the decision to have it wasn't taken lightly by my parents. It was very much that this is last resort. There's not really anything we can do. Apparently the doctors said, she could be in this psychosis for a very long time. We don't know, but would you like to try this ECT? So I was at the time of no mental good capacity to be able to make that decision myself. And so I was given ECT, and it must have worked, because I'm here sat talking to you now, and I think I had 10 out of the 12 sessions in the end, so I didn't need them all, which I was grateful for, yes, it was interesting, and that's why I have such short-term memory loss. So this is why my memory is kind of deleted of those many weeks, months I was in hospital, because I have that one memory of that nuclear bomb hallucination, but all the rest, is all in my medical notes, to be read further down the line, kind of thing. But
so it's not an emotional record for you to know how you felt. It's a very black and white bullet point.
Exactly, Matt. Exactly.
Which isn't helpful for you, is it? In terms of
it's very although in some respects it is helpful, in some respects it's not, because I want to be I want to have that emotional attachment to me, but I also want to keep it at arm's length, because
that's
it's
a good,
not
great
me.
point.
It's not me, and I know that mental state I was in, it is me, but it's almost, there's something going on wrong in my brain at that point. And so, in that respect, it's not me. And also it's kind of a little bit easier to put it into a box and tie a bow over it and kind of put it to the side. But I almost need to, and I'm still going through my recovery now. It's 3 years on since my last psychosis, and I'm still very much kind of baby steps, getting there. But I really believe that I can recover from this if I talk it out with people. So I think that I almost need to bring it alive before I can put it to bed. And I know that sounds a bit weird, but I think I need to, I think I do eventually need to read my medical notes, but not, under safe conditions, like with someone, whatever. Because there's that hole in my life. There's just like a big hole that I don't know what I was like. I don't, and I have affected a lot of people. I caused so much drama in my family and with Nick, and I was such a, I'm learning that it wasn't me. It wasn't, it's not me, but it was at that point a burden to people, because I was putting so much strain on everyone, because it was very stressful, and and I didn't know what was going on. So to me, it feels very odd that, I was in cuckoo land. I was just nowhere. And at the same time, and so my recovery almost was fairly, initially, it was fairly easy, because it was very much, like I didn't really have this, like you said, I didn't have this emotional attachment to it. It was very black and white, and it was very much like, oh, well, that didn't really happen, or it kind of did, but I don't really remember it, so I don't really care. Meanwhile, my family and Nick have been through, a roller coaster of emotions to try and look after me and care for me and make the right decisions for me at the right time. And so for them, I think, it's been a hell of a journey, but I'm learning slowly that it's actually my recovery that's really, really important to me. And that I have got a long way to go to kind of deal with all the things that I'm feeling.
And have you found from those relationships point of view, because like you said, you're living this experience from a subjective point of view, you've then got your family, you've got Nick, your fiance, who is living an objective version of that. Did that put strain on those relationships, or did it demonstrate to you that these are why I have these relationships, and ultimately this is what love is, by accepting me and you and other people in whatever state they are?
Yeah, I mean, I'm very fortunate to have an extremely loving and supportive family, and have Nick, and they stuck through me through thick and thin, and they were there to kind of prop me up when I couldn't prop myself up. And it's actually, I thought when it first happened, oh my goodness, this is going to be so damaging to the whole family and to me and Nick, and oh gosh, maybe he wants to run a million miles away. But in actual fact, the opposite has happened. And I really, my older sister, for example, she was amazing throughout the whole, so are all my siblings, but Kate's really, I really became very close, because she was just on the phone to me every night in hospital, and was really there for me. And I think that it hasn't been an easy one, but I think I can say now that we've come out of it, thank goodness, and we're stronger. I'm a different person from it, definitely, but I'm hoping that I'm building myself up and I'm becoming a stronger person.
And do you think, like, on that topic of relationships and the connections that you have, in terms of your experience of love, it seems to me, what I'm kind of maybe incorrectly, but maybe reading between the lines, is that you've maybe got a better sense of what love is
Yeah, I
in
mean,
this context, which I'm not sure actually people who haven't been through an experience like you have may never get that understanding.
I don't know, because I think, you know, love is a funny one. Like, you know, I think I didn't need to go through this to know that my parents loved me, for example. Like, or to know that Nick loved me. You know, I knew that originally. I think it definitely has its testing moments, which kind of maybe enhances that love, or enhances that kind of relationship. And you know, we're able to talk about it now and kind of revisit it. And Nick and I often sit on the sofa and just kind of touch on little things, and you know, and it's definitely built our relationship. I don't think I'm more in love because of it, if that's what you mean. But yeah.
But now through that experience, there's a, you know, yes, those relationships were very deep and loving. Are they more deep, and do you have a stronger connection as a result?
Yeah.
Or is it just different?
I think I do. I mean, it has helped that I've moved home, and so, you know, in a physical sense, in a proximity sense, I've been closer to mum and dad, and I've really enjoyed kind of you know, getting to know them again, almost, with my new recovered self, and being close to them, and you know, that's been really great. So I have actually really enjoyed that, and so yeah, so it's definitely built bridges rather than bash them down, which, you know, is good.
Which was your fear at the time as well?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So when you mentioned earlier about, you mentioned this word belief quite a lot, in terms of what you're experiencing during those episodes and before. Can you see that your belief system has changed from, let's say, when you were 25, 24, even before that, to where you are now?
So yes, I mean, it's definitely changed. I mean, I had some kind of quite wacky delusions and hallucinations, which kind of led me to believe that, you know, these voices were spiritual, and I was being told, you know, all sorts of things. And you know, I wrote a lot in my poems, actually, about kind of these beliefs that I had growing, these kind of spiritual beliefs that had come to me overnight almost. And that I didn't believe before at all. And so I wrote a lot about my poems about them. And then I actually asked my CPN, my community nurse, one day when I was getting better. I said to her, look, can I believe in, let's call it God, you know, let's spirituality, whatever. Can I believe in something and be better? Like, that's what I asked her, because I didn't want, if I wanted to get better at this point, I'd made a conscious decision in my head that I don't want to be that person who's had, you know, 6 psychoses and is 35. You know, I want to get better. I want to make the right decisions in my life so that I can hold on to my health now. And so at this point, I was kind of at a bit of a crossroads, and I thought, oh, this is a bit scary, because I kind of have these new beliefs, but I also want to get better. But my new beliefs kind of were born from when I was quite ill, and so can I be well and believe in them, or are they, you know, not? Is that not possible? And so my CPN, my nurse, she actually said to me very honestly, she said, of course, Al, you can believe in what you want to believe in, and so long as and stay well. So it was that moment that was kind of quite a turning moment for me, because I was a bit like, oh well, this is great. This means I can explore explore my beliefs, and they might not be as radical as they were now, when I was ill, but I still believe in something off the back of it, and I can still be, and I'm allowed to be well. So it was kind of quite a liberating moment when she said that to me, because I was a bit like, oh gosh, this is okay. And what I wrote about in my poems, I don't necessarily believe in anymore, but it's always developing my spiritual beliefs. So yeah.
And do you think, in terms of your beliefs, because if I consider my belief system, I'm not sure I could articulate it. It's something that it's almost, it feels like it's in your subconscious, and it's things that emerge. We talk about lots of cognitive biases as a result of these beliefs, but it's something that I'm not necessarily sure I could touch on. Do you think that when you had these new beliefs, did it feel like they were more in your conscious? They were almost like on the surface, you could touch them, compared to a much, something that you couldn't necessarily feel? I'm not sure if that explains if that's a good question or not, but
yeah. I know what you mean. I think I was very vocal about it all, and I wouldn't be as vocal today as I was when I was very ill. I was kind of saying all sorts of random stuff that I don't believe in, but that I don't necessarily believe in now, but was my reality, like I say, at the time. But I agree with you. I mean, I can't really vocalize what I believe in anymore, only in my head and to myself, and but yeah, so I think that's.
But I think what's fascinating, what I find fascinating about this conversation, is that, I mean, what you've been through is it's terrifying, frustrating. I mean, frankly, and I've said this before, you are probably one of the bravest women I've ever met. Coming through that. I mean, and like you said, you're talking, you've got a business, Modern Calligraphy. You are, having gone from there to there, is incredible. And frankly, I'm lost for words. Like, it is incredible what you've got.
I don't know if it's bravery, but I think that it's all about taking baby steps. I just was kind to myself. Like at the beginning, I just had to be very kind to myself, and just really, not try and not beat myself up about this happening to me, because it happened to me because of a genetic composition, a biological thing that was going in my head, and I was lucky to not really have environmental factors. So for me, it was more my genes and my biology, so I had to just be very kind to myself, and just not do everything really slowly at the beginning. I had to just kind of, this is like in 2015 when I sat on my sofa and I just was watching Friends on repeat, and just like watching like really easy stuff, and just letting myself have that moment of just, okay, this is okay, this is I'm riding the wave, I'm almost riding this wave, and I don't need to I couldn't bounce back to my old life straight away. And so I was lucky enough to have a supportive family, and everyone just kind of encouraging me to get better slowly.
It's interesting you said that about being kind to yourself. Were you kind to yourself before?
Probably, I don't really think I really thought much about my mental health before I got ill, really, which is really crazy now, because obviously it's at the forefront of my mind, at least, and of many people's minds. But I had just been bumbling along life, and just having highs, having lows, having whatever, and not really taking the time to probably look after myself properly. I was very, I was just bouncing from here, there and everywhere, keeping busy, having a great time. But probably, in terms of my mental health, I hadn't really addressed it, or looked it in the eye, or thought about it really. So
also, why would you?
Yeah.
From that perspective.
Yeah, true. So it was, It was very much at the early stages. I tried, but it was very hard not to overthink everything. I really tried to just come to terms with everything slowly, and I was having regular meetings with nurses and doctors and health professionals, and my parents went to some carers meets and carers talks, to learn about schizoaffective disorder themselves and psychosis and things. And it wasn't easy at times. Like, I will be honest, like, it was, it was hard to, communication is something I'm really passionate about. I love communication. I was really interested in speech and language therapy. That's what I was studying twice when I had my psychosis. So I was kind of effectively chucked off the course twice because I couldn't go back. So I didn't follow that through in the end. But I am really passionate about communication, and I don't think my communication was probably at its top when I was in my recovery. I needed to communicate, but I probably didn't as well as I can now. And I can talk about it now to friends, family openly, Nick, but at the time I found it very fractious and very kind of intimidating I just wanted it to all be over. I just wanted it to be out of my life and over. Whereas now I'm very much of the mentality that, I am open to talking about it and opening that box and kind of going in there and, exploring it a little bit further. So yeah, but I think that's quite natural. I tried to tell myself it was quite natural to.
But I mean, you're so. I mean, you speak so with such humility about it. Like, I'm sitting here with with tears at the back of my eyes, imagining and thinking it, for you to have gone through that to where you are now is, it is amazing for you to have fundamentally lost contact with reality, not just once but twice, and in a prolonged period, having periods where let's say like you said, you've had sessions of electric shock therapy where you can't remember. It's an enormous life event for someone who is in their at the time was in their 20s. Like, but like you said, being kind, taking baby steps was fundamentally important to help you slowly recover. And I think that's where I want to kind of understand now, like from where you are, like what you talk about, coping strategies, you talk about being kind to yourself. What kind of stuff do you do day to day to keep yourself in a state where you're happy?
So I think to answer that, I'll just tell you the main two emotions that I'm feeling from off the back of and how I'm dealing with those two emotions, basically. So my main two emotions that I'm feeling from everything happening, the first one is anger. I'm quite angry at the situation, that it took, like you say, it took time away in my 20s, and it took some valuable time away in my 20s. It wasn't an insignificant period of time. It was months, years kind of thing we're talking. And so I am quite angry at that, and and I'm dealing with that at the moment, which I'll explain in a moment. And then I have this guilt. I have this guilt over me, which is kind of like for everyone, really, for everyone caring for me, for my family. I'm so guilty that my parents never made it out to Sri Lanka. I'm so guilty for putting them through, seeing me, because even just to see me in those conditions was pretty horrible. And so yeah, I feel guilty and angry. Those are my two main things.
Those two emotions are extremely powerful on their own.
Yeah, and then mixed together. So I'm kind of working through them, and I'm I have to say I don't have like a set toolbox, so to speak, but I'm definitely, and my toolbox, I'm finding, if I can call it such a thing, is kind of is just developing. So it's, at the beginning it was, like I say, being kind to myself, taking baby steps, just like letting myself not overthink everything, just coming to terms with everything slowly in my head. And then it started to be like things like keeping active. So I've I try and keep active. I try and monitor. I'm actually quite good at monitoring my sleep, because I know that that's one of my biggest triggers to slipping into psychosis. So I have to be really careful about my sleep. So I have to kind of have quite good insight into that, which I am developing at the moment. And I am finding that, you know, if I have a poor night's sleep, then I just log it in my head, or I tell Nick or something like that, and then I make sure that I make up for it the next night, or I just am aware that, okay, I've had a bad night's sleep, this could affect my mood today, or this could affect this and this and this.
And does it, and you know, may I interject, and does it help having a fiance that is a sleep specialist?
yes, he's very interested in sleep, so he likes when I talk about it. So yeah, Nick being a sleep consultant is quite a good thing, I have to say. Yeah, no, and I'm aware of my mood as well. So, you know, my mood, if I think that was one thing I struggled with at the beginning. You know, I was worried, I was petrified that what if I had a really good day, and I had a really happy day, and I was really happy, you know, at the beginning, and it was no fault of my family's, no fault of Nick's, but when I was very happy at the beginning, everyone was treading on eggshells, and it was tenterhooks, and everyone kind of tensed up, because it was very much like, oh gosh, she's happy, oh no, where's this going, kind of thing. And or the opposite, if I had a bad day or whatever. And so it was very frustrating at the beginning, because it was kind of like, I want to be the monitor of my mood, but obviously it had knock-on effects to other people. And so, you know, I was juggling that for a while, you know, juggling how I came across to other people, which was another layer of the whole thing, I think.
In some respects, were you trying to contain those emotions?
No, I don't think I would ever contain, as in I would definitely talk to my nurse about them if that happened. So I would definitely just talk and just say, look, this is going on at home, or this is going on with me right now, and I feel that I'm having to do this. And, you know, I'd be very open with her, and I've always had, you know, consistently somebody that I can talk to all the way through my journey. So I've kind of whether that be Nick sometimes, whether it be my nurse, I've recently signed up to talking therapy, so I will, and I've only actually felt like doing that in the last 2 weeks, which is kind of crazy, because you know, it's 3 years on, and I thought, you know, and I was offered psychology when it first happened, and I didn't really want it, and I think I did it just to kind of please everyone, but I didn't really do it for myself, you know. And then I signed up 2 weeks ago, and I just thought, you know what, I think it's time that I spoke this out with a professional, with someone that doesn't know me. And I have to say, that's another thing kind of in my toolbox, is talking to strangers. I actually find quite cathartic talking to strangers about my mental health, and about, you know, about what happened, and maybe about what's going on in their life. You know, I do find talking to somebody who doesn't know me and doesn't have any links to my family, and probably won't ever meet me, kind of thing, very therapeutic, and very kind of very good.
And in some respects, is that around kind of non-judgmental conversations around?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's it. Yeah, and not that people around me would like I can talk to my friends, but it just creates a different dynamic, I think. And I think the dynamic, and some people it will work for, talking to friends, talking to family in depth, that will definitely work for some people, but for me it's definitely the no strings attached, that kind of like nothing's going to get back kind of thing, and I can just say what I want kind of thing. So that is quite good, but then on the other hand, I'm here today and I'm talking, you know, to you, and I feel like you know, I have started slowly recently talking to other people about it, because, you know, if we can normalize this stuff, then that would be a great outcome. So
and like we were discussing before, like we talk about normalizing, like your experience and what you've gone through, like we were talking about stats, like 3% of people globally will experience a psychotic episode or a psychosis at one time in their life.
Yeah, which is a crazy stat. Absolutely,
it really is.
It's like I was saying to you before the call, Matt, so it's kind of like if you think about it, I think it works out as a 1 in 100 or 1 in 200 or something like that down a street. So if you think about it as a street in London or a street anywhere, and you have 1 in 100 people having a psychosis, like that's, you know, one a street kind of thing. So
yeah, exactly. I mean, you know, to be honest, I mean, I'm looking out the window now, and you know, there are enough houses there for 100 people to be living there. The statistically, one person would be experiencing that.
Yeah. So that's what when my nurse told me that stat, the 1 in 100 thing, I thought, gosh, that is, it made me feel kind of, I know this is going to sound weird, but it made me feel relieved. It gave me a sense of, wow, this is happening. And I thought I really did think, well, I mean, obviously I've been in a hospital with other people who are experiencing it, so I have met other people who have had it. But when you come out into your normal life, it feels like you're the only one for miles and miles and miles, you know. And yeah, when I speak to friends about it, it's kind of, you know, it is a new thing. No one's really heard about it or knows what it is, and you know, and I had to, even afterwards, like, I wasn't, you know, I know what a psychosis is because I've had one in my head, but to kind of put that into words is a really hard thing. And I think there's a program called My Psychosis and Me, with David Harewood, the actor. And and it's very, I don't know if you've seen it, Matt, but
yeah, I did watch it.
Oh yeah, I think it's very well done. I think he kind of I watched it with Nick on a train, and we ended up in tears, both of us, while we were watching it, because it's quite emotive. But I think he says something in it, like, a friend reminded me recently, he says something in it like, you never get the number of cards that get sent for get well soon are not mental health cards, something like that. You know, mental health get well soon cards are not sent to mental health patients effectively. They're sent to people who have, you know, got, you know, generally there's not as many mental health cards going out there to people who have got mental health problems, which is kind of, you know, quite unbelievable when you think about it. Because
and how many people will experience a mental health issue, either temporarily in their lives? We're talking, is it 1 in 3?
Yeah, I don't know the stat, but yeah,
it's a huge percentage, which goes to show that, you know, and this is why we're having these kinds of conversations, that mental health isn't this small fraction of people that are over there. It is happening to everyone, and can happen to everyone. Like you said, like you've been through experience, and prior to you being 24, 25, you would have assumed that you had had no mental health challenges, issues at all. And then suddenly something happens, and frankly, I think that's the reality. It can happen to anyone.
Yeah, definitely. And it can happen when you're least expecting it, or when you are expecting it, or it can be just around the corner, or it can be big, it can be small, it can be on any, you know, I know mine, and mine seems quite dramatic or whatever, but obviously mental health takes different forms. And, you know, I don't know, I think it's, you know, it's one of those things that we need to start talking about, and we need to just make sure that everyone knows that we're all in this together, kind of thing.
Yeah, and it's interesting. When you first had your episode, that was the care that looked after you was remedial. What you're doing now is preventative. And you know, this is something that this theme comes up and up again. The preventative doesn't need to start when something happens.
No.
Your preventative could start when you're 10, 11, 12, 13, when a lot of the big changes are happening.
Exactly. And maybe, you know, maybe if I did, maybe, I mean, who knows? I mean, you can't change what's happened, but maybe if I had been a bit more aware of my mental health before it all happened, maybe it wouldn't have led to, or it wouldn't have been as severe as it was, kind of thing. You know, and yeah, what if you start looking after your mental health when you're 10? What repercussions could that have? Like, that could be massive, you know, that could really change the way, you know, your mental health path is kind of set out.
Is that, would you, if you were speaking to a child or a young adult, based on your experiences, would you encourage them to explore their mental health?
Yeah, I would. I think it's important to start, and it doesn't need to be, to a child, it doesn't need to be a scary word, like, you don't need to say scary words to them or anything like that. It can just be in a very gentle kind of soft approach, to start thinking about how you're feeling and how you are, like, how are you, day to day, how you feeling, kind of thing.
And just having those conversations as if they're normal conversations.
Yeah,
How
exactly.
actually are you doing?
Exactly. So yeah, I think there's definitely ways and means of doing it. But yes, I think it probably would help, to be honest.
And it's, I mean, Alice, we've had a fascinating and, for me, insightful conversation. You've been through a huge amount, and it seems like where you are now is what a very powerful and moving journey. And it seems like you've got the preventative toolbox, toolkit. You've got some approaches in there that are really helping, and at the same time are able you to normalize your life in a way that you're able to do your business, you're able to earn money, you'll be able to have relationships, and that's I think for the end of the podcast, that's a really that's an incredibly positive end and outlook for you, right?
Yeah, I think it, I'm still on my journey, and I'm like I said at the beginning, my health is my wealth, and I do not want to slip into another psychosis. I want to look after my mental health, and I want to I want to be well. And I'm determined to empower myself and kind of put in everything I can, whether that means being aware of my sleep, being aware of my mood, talking to strangers, talking to friends, talking to family, being open about the whole thing. I want to stay well, and that is almost my number one goal, I'd say.
Yeah. And I think those words it's a really powerful choice of words, about mental wealth. Like, you can gain wealth, you can lose wealth. And from your perspective, you've lost and you've gained.
Yeah, for sure.
Alice, thank you so much for coming on Psychic Stories.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you for having me.
Oh, pleasure. Thank you very much for sharing your story. And thank you for everyone listening. You can subscribe to us on most major podcast platforms: YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Just search for Sidekick Community or Psychic Stories and we'll pop up. Alice, thank you again.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you very much.